Okay, so you're thinking about moving to Portland, Oregon, especially from California or out of state. It really doesn't matter. You've heard my story a lot. Today, we actually have our lender, AddieNet. He's going to be interviewing Lucas. Lucas joined our team. So not only did he move to Portland, Oregon, he also joined our real estate team. He's 6'10". He's got incredible personality, and you're going to get to hear that. The pains, the struggles, what he likes, what he doesn't like, and just really what the relocation was like moving to Portland. So if you are moving, there's no better in-depth story and preparation that you can take than hearing it from Lucas today. So if you want that, we're getting after it right now. What's up, everybody? This is Jackson Wilkie with the Real Agent Now Group right here in Portland, Oregon. This is your first time to this channel and you want to learn everything about what it's like to work, eat, sleep, live, play, and exactly what it's like to move here from somebody else. Make sure you tap that subscribe button and you click the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. And we've helped 143 clients move to Portland in the last 2 years, less than 2 years. So if you are moving, you want the dream relocation team, the only way we can help you, you got to reach out. You got to give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, even send the pigeon carrier. However you want to get a hold of us, we got your back when moving to Portland, Oregon. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to kick it right over to our interview. It is a longer one if you want to just listen to it, whatever, but this is going to be true in-depth and the things that you need to be aware of with your relocation.
Lucas has a really great story to share because he recently relocated from where?
I relocated actually from San Diego, California.
Yeah.
So.
Well, actually, it wasn't even really recent anymore.
No, it's actually almost a year now. So,
and that was perfect timing on the music. For all the people out there, we actually have to press a button and walk in here and let that music play. Like we don't have anybody helping us out today, but you relocated. That was January, February?
That was like February now.
Yeah. No, and it's great because in our space, we primarily focus on assisting people relocating from out of state to the Pacific Northwest. And Lucas is actually an agent, and he's now on a team that I get to work with and support. And he brings this perspective that all of our clients need and are personally going through, right, Lucas?
Exactly. I mean, the whole relocation game, working with Heather, working with Addie, I've done it. It was an amazing process. So,
well, and I think, we spend a massive amount of time on the phone with people preparing for the move because it is really stressful, Lucas. Like, I don't care if you have kids, no kids, it's just you and a spouse, whatever. You got to move all your stuff. It's kind of the saying I say, I don't care if you're moving across the street or across the country. Either way in those scenarios, you have to pack up your stuff. You got to put it into something and you got to get it to the new location, right?
That's exactly it. Whether it's packing, selling your stuff like what we did, and you got to figure out how to move it there too. I mean, it's not an easy game. It was definitely a stressful situation that, definitely Heather, the team, Real Agent Now, Addie, all helped out with so much.
Well, and it's been fun too, is we've been doing more and more transactions together for you to be able to give, like I was saying before, that point of view of, hey, you just went through this California to Oregon move, and what are our clients going through? So in this episode, everyone, we're going to go through some of the top things and do a little bit of storytelling in regards to the move and things that kind of nuggets, takeaways, things that you might want to consider when you're moving. And before we dive into it, let's make sure your mic is like right close. I just don't want anyone to miss the story because this is really big. But talk to me. So you guys were in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
You and your wife. And when did you guys originally start living in San Diego?
Yeah, so I actually moved out there almost 10 years ago at this point. So I'm born and raised in Michigan, believe it or not. So I know a few things about moving across country, whether it's from the east to west or north to south, whatever you have, right?
Not your first rodeo.
Not at all. So I lived there for about 10 years, and then my wife lived there for about 6 years. So we met each other down there. She's from Seattle. So, it was a good move up here to Portland, get it close enough to the family to say hello, but far enough away where they have to call us before they come down, right?
I like to call that healthy distance.
There we go.
So talk to me, when you guys were down in San Diego, were you leasing, renting?
We were renting.
You were?
We were renting.
Talk to me, paint me a picture of what that space was and how much they were charging. Or did you guys have some homie hookup?
No. So down in San Diego, your typical apartment rent can be anywhere from, I got a steal on my first one for about $1,200 a month for a small studio.
Yeah.
And then when we moved in together, we were actually renting a 2-bed, 2-bath for about $2,800 a month.
So $2,800, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. This is like condo apartment style.
Exactly. That's
not
an
a
apartment
detached
style,
house.
not a detached house. That's actually in a community itself. So we did have the amenities such as a pool and a game room and stuff. But, that was also during COVID where everything shut down, where we weren't able to access that stuff as well.
No games.
Exactly.
Yeah, no community Jenga on Fridays.
Right. No
Unless it was just you and
tables.
Nicole. That's it.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Exactly.
So $2,800 a month, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. That's pretty expensive, especially for something of which, for $500,000 home, $600,000 home, any sort of decent down payment, you're probably going to have a pretty comparable mortgage payment in the Portland market, right?
Exactly. And that was really a big driver of why we decided to move up here. Being from the Midwest, housing prices just so low. And I couldn't justify, paying $750,000 to $1 million on a home down in San Diego for my first home. So,
yeah, I didn't even ask you because so you're renting $2,800 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. What is that housing market in your neighborhood? Because I don't know San Diego off the top of my head. I'm sure there's different quadrants, a little more affordable,
Exactly.
super expensive oceanfront, but.
Yep.
Let us a little bit of insight on that San Diego real estate market to buy. What do you need?
Yeah. So to buy, you can get in there for around $500,000. With that being said, that's going to be your condos. That's going to be apartment style living for you.
Okay.
We were really looking for a single family detached home at the end of the day.
Something with a yard. At least.
Exactly.
Doesn't have to be acreage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when you get into that market, now you're really talking anywhere from 600 on up. And we want to start a family soon. And so we were also looking at school districts. And in order for that to happen, you have to move, 40, 45 minutes north of the city and really up your budget. So that was a big deciding factor on it.
Well, two of the biggest pieces to real estate that I've learned in the last 6 years is location and school districts, because those are really the two things that you can't change in real estate and a property.
Exactly.
What are the odds that you're going to improve the school district of the house that you buy? Nah, probably not going to happen, right? And then the physical location, unfortunately, can't be moved. So
Exactly.
I can only imagine, especially in the Portland market, when you're looking at the top 3 school districts, for example, your Lake Oswego, your Westland, and then I don't know what number 3 is off the top of my head.
Yep.
Tiger. Yeah, something like that. So those, you're looking at starting median prices almost at $1 million, maybe $850 on the super low in the Portland market, Portland Metro, but down in San Diego, top school districts, what is that? Are we start talking $2 million?
You're not getting in there for under $1 million. That is for sure. So you're really looking in San Diego, your Carlsbads, your Rancho Santa Fe's, that kind of stuff, La Jolla. And when you're talking about Rancho Santa Fe, La Jolla, that's your old money down in San Diego. You're talking $2 million. Carlsbad's going to be around your $1 million for, not that much.
I was even I think I did a quick Zillow Redfin thing when you and I were talking to a client on Zoom, and it was oh my gosh, really it felt like starting at 1.25 was kind of starter. And we're not talking here in the Portland market, 1.25, you can get an incredible home. Probably custom built, 2,500 square foot, exactly how you want it. You're going to be impressing. But down in that market, and I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, but you're not getting anything. So to kind of talk to me about you and Nicole, you're okay, well, it's expensive. We might want to have kids, and we're considering the Portland, Southwest Washington area for all these future forecast budgets, affordability. How did this conversation surface between you two?
Yeah, so between that, I mean, it was really getting closer to family, and then, you know, seeing the housing prices that are up here.
You're just looking at it and you're like, there's no way.
It was a no-brainer at the end of the day. I mean, getting out to the Pacific Northwest with the lush greenery that I had in Michigan, but keeping the mountains that we had down in San Diego at the end of the day, but combine that with a lower cost of living, with your housing market, you know, being a little bit healthier at that. You know, we got in at about 500,000, and fortunately we got a new build with it. That's something that you can't get down in San Diego at that price.
You'd be in like a 1-1 condo with one parking spot.
Exactly.
And probably a lot of stairs.
Exactly. So, and you know, we have a dog. It's a crazy dog, you know, it's out running 24/7, and we had a 3rd floor apartment, and I can tell you right now, I was done with those stairs. So
I've actually met Jax, your dog. Jax needs space, needs to be able to run.
Oh yeah.
And that's going to be really hard to do in a condo situation. So I still remember you guys reaching out. I do remember this conversation. So let's kind of, you identify that Portland is one of your top picks, right? Were you looking at anything else, or was it like, hey, we're looking Pacific Northwest?
Yep. So we were between the Pacific Northwest and moving back to Michigan at the end of the day.
Okay.
Exactly. So with that being said, I mean, the deciding factor on the Pacific Northwest was, you know, the surroundings, your greenery, your mountains, all of that. So back where I grew up, you know, it was flat land. That was it. So you had some lake life, but out here in Portland, you have that lake life, and you have some hikes that you can do. You have Mount Hood, you have all the Multnomah area. So it was just it was a no-brainer in our eyes.
That is one thing. Like, we take note of, you know, we have relocated hundreds of people from across America, and that is definitely a top comment, is the diversification of landscape. So within Portland, you're an hour from the mountains, snow, elevation, forest, mountain lakes. You're also an hour and a half to the nearest point of the Oregon coast, which will, if you didn't already know, the Oregon coast ain't San Diego coast. I'm telling you that.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's nice a couple months out of the year, 70s, but the rest of it, it's like actual, if you imagine like a stormy, like cliffs and winds and cold and mist and maybe an old sailing novel. Like, that's the setting.
If you guys have ever seen the Goonies, right? So we have Cannon Beach with Haystack Rock out there. I mean, that'll show you right there. I mean, what the Oregon coast is like.
You check out that oldie, the Goonies is filmed.
My favorite character ever, Sloth.
Was that was Lincoln City?
Yep.
Lincoln City, Oregon. Yeah. So you could check that out. I think I just wanted to kind of elaborate, though. Everybody's saying, oh my gosh, the elevation, the mountains, the trees, air qualities. And people talk about how different the air is. Like, it's nice.
It's way different. And I mean, the beautiful thing is too, so we live right in North Portland right now. And I mean, I would consider it pretty much city life at that point. City. But the great thing is that we can drive 20, 30 minutes and be in a massive park at Forest Park, or we can go the other way and be in Multnomah Falls with massive hikes out there. So we really have the best of both worlds, where we can go down to the city, downtown, or we can go get lost in the wilderness at any time.
And it's not, I get a lot of people from California, most recently San Francisco, talking about on the weekends when they have a day off. What's tough is there's just so many people that going to do something on a Saturday. The traffic, the lines, the congestion, and then it's like, oh, you spend over a 30-year day getting to what you want to do in the city, and then you can only spend 60 minutes doing it, and then you got to pack up to get home so the kids can have dinner or snack or whatever, and that's your Saturday, and you're like, But Portland brings in what you're explaining, an amazing opportunity where, like, hey, maybe I live in northeast, and I'm a 6-minute walk to a huge park. So Portland has these amazing parks with 100-foot Douglas fir trees that you can't even see the top of them. And you're walking your dog, you're enjoying it. But say you wanted to go do a hike, and it's super easy to get out to those things.
Exactly.
So no, I love hearing other people that come here and tell me these things, because I think being a local Oregonian to the Pacific Northwest, you kind of take it for granted, and you kind of forget, and you hear other people just get their breaths taken away, and it's super cool. So going to that, when you guys decided you're still in San Diego, then you come up to visit, right?
Yep.
So tell me your plan on how, because there's kind of two divisions of either buying virtually or trying to buy what I call boots on the ground. So what did you guys go?
Yeah. So honestly, after, it was only 2 times that I had ever been up to Portland before I decided to buy. Wow. So one of those times was when Listy took us out to see all the different homes and everything. Yeah. So I came up one other time, as a job interview, and then also, going to see the mother-in-law and everything. And I kind of knew right then, it was a good mesh of where I grew up and where I was living now. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of fell in place. And then, Listy started taking us out everywhere. I mean, we packed in, I think it was 18 homes in the one day that we were up here, and just took a look at all of them. So we started over on the west side, took a look all the way through the west side, Hillsboro, Beaverton, made our way up to North Portland, the Northeast, Southeast, all of that. And, got us a really good feeling of what each neighborhood was when we were up there. I remember, meeting up with you during that, and you wanted to take us for a neighborhood tour, and we said, no, we have to look at houses.
You got 19 houses, 18 houses to look at.
Right.
So what would be your advice to someone that is coming to Portland to visit? Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people try to do a trip up on a 3-day weekend. Give me some of your insight on coming to visit. How would you plan it? What would you do differently? What did you do right?
Exactly. So what I would do is, first off, reach out to us, and we can give you guys a good idea of different neighborhoods to take a look at. What are your interests at the end of the day? Right. And we can really get you into those different pockets to go look out at. And from there, I always say, spend a day, checking out different pockets within the city, but then also spend a day going to check out all the stuff that's outside of the city, go see the wilderness and all of that, because that's really what the Pacific Northwest wants to offer you, is the outdoor activity as well. So that'll give you a good idea of, hey, this is what the city life is like, and this is what I can do outside of the city as well, and get that really good vibe of the area.
And I love that you said that, those little pockets, because Portland and even Southwest Washington, it's all really kind of on a grid pattern. Mm-hmm. So the Willamette River divides the east and the west side of the major Portland metro, and then there's the north and the south. So you do want to go check out these different areas, because the vibe is totally different. The elevation, the accessibility to shopping and local things. Inner city living is quite different than just maybe 5-6 miles outside.
That's exactly it.
And south and north is dramatically different. But then also from an investment standpoint, there's things to consider. And it's a real give or take on choosing the right home and what works for you. But most important, I think it does come down to lifestyle. And what you're telling me, I don't even think about that. Make sure you get out into the greenery, create some time to go do an activity. Because I think a lot of people do come here and they just hit as many houses, and they're driving all the time, which is great. You get a feel for it, but are you really getting a feel for the lifestyle? Right?
Exactly. And just in the Pacific Northwest, it's so outside centric as well. I mean, San Diego, Michigan, when it rains out, people shelter. They're scared of it, right? Out in the Northwest, we don't care about that. I'd say it's crazy if you see somebody with an umbrella, right? You wear your rain jacket and you go out for your hike that day.
That's definitely the number one way to know someone isn't from Portland, is if they're carrying around an umbrella.
There we go.
Because everyone who's spent enough time here, born and raised here, or who lived here for a while, they know that the rain doesn't last forever. It sprinkles, it goes away, and then sprinkles, it goes away. And you don't want to be lugging around this umbrella all the time, because likely you'll leave it on somewhere and forget it. So no one really carries around umbrellas, unless you're like an avid golfer and you're like out trying to keep your golf clubs dry or something. That's the only exception. But yeah, layered clothing is huge. I know my wife and I has so many jackets. Too many. Like, we've got a style jacket, a shell, a Gore-Tex, a non-Gore-Tex, windbreaker, fleece, down. I mean, you got to have a lot of different layers. I mean, with this is your first fall here, right? So tell me, like, I don't know, because I want to go through your story, but how are you adjusting to this weather? I mean, San Diego to Portland,
yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of an adjustment,
right,
without a question. With that being said, I always say, San Diego, it's great. I love it. It's a great place to go vacation too. Right. Sunny and 75 at the end of the day, it got a little old for my wife and I. You see sunny and 75 and it's just kind of, all right, it'll be the same tomorrow. Right. So here, I love the rain. I love seeing the differences in weather out here. When it's a rainy day, I look forward to, hey, maybe we'll get some thunder today. Right. Or, if it turns to sunny day, it's like you have to take advantage of it. It's so nice out and it's so gratifying when it's actually sunny out and, being able to go out and do all those things. But then staying nice and cozy when it is raining, but still going out and hiking and all that stuff. And fortunately, my dog was a diva down in San Diego, would never get wet, never wanted to go outside when it rained, and he's getting used to it. He's having fun now. So I got to keep him out of the mud puddles now.
Let's go play.
Right.
Well, and all that rain and diversification of the weather is what brings the greenery and the beautiful landscape and all the diversification of the plants and the trees and the leaf colors. And that is fun. That is a common denominator of people's feedback. So getting back to your storyline, I think you answered, hey, build out a plan when it comes to planning to come visit, connect with people like us. Because what we're going to do off the jump is we're going to get to know you and your story. And a lot of people think that it's just this like casual meet and greet, but really, like, we have done hundreds of consults. So just by getting to hear your story, if you have kids, if you don't have kids, what you do for work, what do you do for hobbies, in our heads, we are really kind of just checking boxes off, unchecking them, highlighting and moving around this Tetris puzzle. And within a conversation, we're usually going to narrow down to like top 3 places that we would think that you're going to fit. And not to say you aren't special out there, because you are to us, but you really fall into like 4 or 5 scenarios, right, Lucas?
Exactly. And that's what, our Zoom meetings are perfect for,
right.
Meeting with yourself, meeting with Heather, before we had 3-4 Zoom calls before we even met you in person. When we met Heather, when we met you, when we came up, we felt like we already knew you. You guys knew everything about us. You knew exactly, this would be a great area for you guys. It's a good way for us to narrow down, where a good fit for you would be within the area.
Well, and doing that in advance is really important, because imagine if let's just say you're going to go on vacation and you're going to like somewhere you've never been before. How much more confident would it be if before you go visit that place, you're talking to someone that is actively involved in the community, a trusted professional within that city. And then, I feel so smart, all the insight. It's like having that local knowledge. And then when you land, you feel even more secured because you're like, hey, I got buddies here.
Right.
So that is the whole flow. And I know I'm trying to hammer on that a little bit harder than I normally would, because Luke is like, we get a lot of people that, can I just have your hot spots? That's what we call those neighborhood tour lists. And like, we put a lot of effort into those. We just don't hand them out for free. Like, we want to get to know you. We want to earn your business. And that's a huge part of our flow, is customizing those lists. But so you come visit, you do this hyper blitz. You guys had a couple days, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You went and saw all these houses. And then what happened?
So from there, honestly, we flew back home. So we had one day where we came up and, we just spent the afternoon when we landed, and, we got a hotel downtown, check out the downtown. From there, Heather really took us out. We blitzed that full day. From there, we got on a flight and went back home. It was perfect. Heather knew exactly what we wanted. We found a perfect home thanks to yourself and Heather, that new construction that honestly wasn't even on the market yet. Yeah. And the perfect thing was, before we went, you came by and showed us the Columbia Park is what we live right off of. So we were able to really say, this is the area we want to live in. We went up and down. It reminded me of our neighborhood reminded me a lot of the neighborhood that I first lived in San Diego called North Park. So we knew, the bars, the restaurants that were right in that area. I mean, it just really felt like home.
Yeah.
So from there, I mean, going home, it was great having the communication from you guys that, I didn't have from previous people that we were working with on past homes.
Yeah.
So that was really the biggest differentiator was the communication at the end of the day. You guys made us feel welcome, made us feel at home. You guys are our friends at this point. And
so much of it does just having that team. Or you're going to choose anyone, have someone that like and trust, and especially if you're moving across the country. I do have a question, and I forgot to ask this when you guys showed up to Portland. What was the homeless situation like from your perspective? Because that's a huge question we get all the time. What's going on with the homeless? And I want to hear what you guys originally experienced when you visited.
Mm-hmm.
What you experienced as you moved here, and what's your perspective now living here?
Yeah, so for reference, I mean, we were really looking at moving almost at the start of the pandemic there. So it was a really interesting time throughout the nation. And I mean, unfortunately, I mean, that pandemic really hit a lot of people's livelihoods pretty hard. So it was really kind of the height of the homeless issue, I mean, throughout the nation at that point. With that being said, coming from San Diego, I didn't look at the homeless situation as being that much worse or different than down in San Diego there. And the one thing that I love about Portland is how giving this city is, how giving everybody is up here. Down in other places that I live, you kind of just, shove people off if they're homeless. And here, it's really, trying to figure out how you can help. How can the city help those individuals? So beyond that, I mean, it's really not much different than any other major city as far as the homeless situation comes.
Well, and I think Portland, I love what you said with the giving piece, because Portland is one of those overly giving. It's a double-edged sword. It's like the more you give, that's great, but then more word gets out, and then also are we becoming over dependent on the giving? So I think what's exciting me the most about that subject line within the Portland Metro is they recently passed a $25 million budget for 2022 to reinitiate and reactivate the Portland City Concern Team, which before the pandemic, that team was active. So there was a full team that went out there and they assisted people in need in getting them in a transitional plan, also preventing unnecessary waste, trash, pollution, maybe camp establishments that aren't approved, and definitely hindering day-to-day business throughout the city. That was totally stopped when the pandemic hit because of the uncertainty of its health and having city workers out and about. So that is now coming back into fruition and motion. And I've seen a lot of conversions of certain areas, particularly downtown, where they've taken blocks, and I don't know if you've seen this, Lucas, but they've taken blocks, they've fenced it off, and they put like a clean kind of tarp looking thing. Not like your brown tarp you put on a car, but like a vent tarp so you can't see through it, Exactly. And that's the one thing, I mean, I'll say from when we moved here up to now, I mean, downtown is night and day as far as that whole situation goes. When we first came, I mean, it was right after the riots. I mean, there was a little bit of disrepair downtown. At this point, it's a great place. I love to go out downtown there. Great food, great bars down there. So it's really, I mean, becoming revitalized again as we keep on moving on past the pandemic. Well, and the riots were so blown out of proportion.
Oh, yeah.
The media, you almost have to 10x, like it was just so blown out of proportion. Like Jimmy, who's from New Jersey, who was on the podcast last week, came cross country, New Jersey, and we're driving through. I picked him up at the hotel. We came here to the studio, and he's like, "Oh, this is it." I showed him right where the federal building was in this block, and like, whoa! It's kind of like this studio. Like people see on video, this studio looks big, and then you get here, like, this is a coat closet,
right?
But that's the same effect that happens with the media. So I just those are really common questions. Like, is it safe there? It's like, are you okay? Yeah, no, I'm fine.
Right.
Like, that was just that happened. It was, the message was great. And I think we really do collectively support all different points of view here in Portland, which makes us very special. And just about everyone is welcome, and their point of view is going to be respected, which brought in protests. And people call it riot, but it was 99% of those were silent, safe protests.
Exactly.
And the rest of it was shenanigans. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in. I don't care if it's our city, Portland, right here. That's going to happen in almost any large congregation, if you will.
Exactly.
You're going to have the sour apple of the bunch. Is that what they call that?
Right. The 0.01% of people that are looking to do harm. Right.
Well, exactly. And I think too, like one of the biggest stuff when people were coming to visit here, you'd see a lot of littering off the side of the freeway because that Portland City concern, the city workers weren't able to get out there. They weren't able to get approved to clean.
Yeah.
So it just became this like snowball effect. It's kind of like when your room gets messy, and you're like, oh, how did this get sideways real fast? Or your home office. Like I just had to clean out my whole home office because my brain was like, I can't work in this environment. Right. But I do think that things are getting back on track. Safety is not a concern in my opinion. And I was just curious to hear if there was like this huge shock, because your experience, people are asking us about it still.
Right. Yeah. People ask us about it all the time. I mean, being on the Zoom calls, I mean, I think that's usually like one of the first 2-3 questions that we always receive. And my response is the same every time. It is really not much difference between any other major city that we have in America.
Yeah. Well, you got it from someone who actually moved here from California as an active participant in the real estate market as an industry professional. I think this is really good feedback for everyone to consider. Now, I think our final chapter on this episode should be talking about the physical move, the closing of the home, the financing piece of it, getting documents signed, and then physically moving all of your stuff up. So talk to me about the closing piece. Or no, let's talk about you talk about what you want first. Which one of those are you going to run with first?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think my biggest piece of advice to anybody that is looking to move across country, further from just your state, is really vet out your moving company at the end of the day. We went through 2 different moving companies before we decided on one. And unfortunately, we went through a moving broker and figured out that's not the best way to go about things. They had little fine print saying we have to pay in cash. And also on top of that, they weren't going to give us the information on the actual company until 2 days before the actual move. So it actually came a day before the move. I called the company to figure out what's going on, and it was some random guy's cell phone who was pissed that I even called him. So
really?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience, to say the least. So we actually ended up canceling that and getting a U-Haul. So my big self, rented a U-Haul and drove it all the way from San Diego up to Portland. So
would you suggest still doing that? Because shipping costs are getting so expensive.
I would 100%. If you're comfortable with driving a bigger truck. My first job in high school was driving trolleys that you see like tourist trolleys around my hometown. So I was fairly comfortable driving a big truck myself. But yeah, I mean, if you're comfortable with that, I'd say go ahead. If you can get all the stuff onto your U-Haul, I mean, it's perfect. So that way I knew where all my stuff was. I was responsible for it the entire time. And I noticed, all these different companies, it's about $10,000 to move a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment. It's not cheap. So it was a really easy way for us to save some money and, have a little bit more responsibility back onto my plate, be able to, see where all my stuff is at.
How are you incorporating your experience moving up here with being a real estate agent now? Like, Are there common questions that keep coming up? Are there like little nuggets that you keep sharing with people that are coming to visit Portland? What is it like when you're touring people right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's perfect. I kind of got a crash course into it. I mean, just figuring out all the areas and everything, going, seeing what Lake Oswego is, going to see what southeast, southwest, north side is. And that's the beauty of it for me, is the fact that I'm learning all these different areas, and me as a new person to the area, I'm able to show everybody moving like, hey, this is really cool. This is what I found out. You should go check this out as well. So it's nice kind of living it a little bit before the potential clients, before they get up here, because I know what they would want to see.
What were you not expecting about Portland until you moved here? Was there something like, oh, wow, or is it everything boring, everything I thought it was going to be?
No, I think the biggest shock to me would be how accessible everything is. Whether you're going from, the tip of Vancouver down to the southern side of Portland, everything is within that, an hour drive at the max. Right.
Even with traffic.
Exactly. Even with traffic. I mean, granted, you do have our two bridges, the 5 and the 205. It might get a little backed up or whatever.
But you start learning when and when not to be on that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And then on top of that, then taking into account an hour and a half you're to Mount Hood, and an hour and a half you're to the coast. So that was the biggest surprise to me living in San Diego. If I drove an hour and a half, all I did is I went to San Diego up to LA at that point, if I'm lucky to get there within an hour and a half. So it was really shocking to me how easy it is to get out and get lost with nobody around you.
And I totally forgot about that point, because we do get so many people. We constantly, when we have these consults and get to know you, video conferences well in advance of you moving here, so many people are like, well, how far is it from here to here? I'm like, well, 20 minutes with no traffic, 40 minutes with traffic. And they're like, and we complain about the 40. Like, you have no idea what traffic is.
Right.
If you're complaining about 35, 40 minutes, you have no idea. Like, we can get all the way across the greater Portland metro in the same amount of time it might take some people in different major cities to merge into the running flow of 7 mile per hour freeway traffic.
Oh, that's exactly. I mean, I just thought it was hilarious the first time that Heather was showing us around, and she's saying, all right, guys, we're going to have a little bit of traffic on the way there.
You're just laughing.
What is this? This isn't traffic. Right?
I forget people laugh at us. Even like Phoenix, it's like, so far to get from so to so. I've got some friends in Phoenix, and they come here. It's like, everything's super easy here. Like, it doesn't even matter.
Right. Yeah. It's
all about perspective.
Yeah. It's too easy to get around here. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Accessibility was the biggest kind of surprise to you. What about kind of friendliness of people, or the way kind of low? Give me more of like, because you go to some cities and it's like, oh, especially if you go like out of country, people know you're not from here, and you act like, do Oregonians hate Californians? It's kind of what I'm getting at, because a lot of people ask us that.
Right. So there's that stigma behind it,
Is it true?
Oregonians hate Californians. That's not true, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I've never saw somebody tell me, hey, get away, you're from California. Right.
Right.
And as far as the personality wise, I mean, again, I grew up in a very different area comparative to San Diego, where in Michigan, small town Michigan, you got your Opes. Hey, how you doing there, right? And going from Ope, that's our thing. Ope, we want some poutine and gravy, that type of stuff, So going from that over to San Diego, it was a little bit different, where you walk by somebody in the street and you say hello. In San Diego, you don't necessarily say hello back. I got a few weird looks saying hello to random people there, right? Here in Oregon, in Portland, Vancouver, it's so nice. You say hello to a random person, like, hey, how you doing? So just kind of the personalities, it's a much more open-minded around here.
I'm biting my tongue, because I know what you're talking about in some parts of Southern California where people don't say hi, and it's kind of weird. I still am like, I didn't even mention this. I was down in San Diego this year. We were down by the Navy shipyards down.
Oh, yeah.
You know the waterfront?
My old stomping grounds, yep.
Very close to the airport.
Yep.
What would you say that's a couple miles away?
Airport, yeah, it's about a mile or two away from there. Yep.
I remember pulling out Lyft because I was waiting for my flight. I was just like experiencing San Diego downtown, walking around. It's beautiful, whatever. And Lyft told me 58 minutes and $70 to get 1 mile to the airport.
Oh yeah.
I was like, are you kidding me? No joke. I walked.
Yeah.
I walked from the ships to the airport.
Yep, that's the wonderful thing of those bird scooters down there. That's always how we got around.
Well, unfortunately, I had a checked bag. I don't know how that would work.
Ooh, yeah, that would be.
I guess I could balance it.
I don't know. I'm not good enough at balancing just to do it myself on a scooter, so I couldn't imagine pulling a suitcase with me.
I guess we would put the suitcase on the scooter platform and then maybe straddle the suitcase like you're hopping on a horse and put your hand on the handle. We should have tried that. But the point was like drive a mile for an hour in the middle of that's tough. Mm-hmm. That's tough. And you're not really experiencing that much up in Portland with an hour, like 35 minutes, you're frustrated. You're like, oh my God, this is taking forever. But there still is traffic. You got to be real about that. I think most people do account and they become accustomed to just not being on the roads when if controllable. Some people physically have to be in an office and work that normal 9 to 5. They can't avoid it, but most people are working their lifestyles and schedules around it.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the beautiful thing about Portland too, is I mean, your rush hour is really limited to an hour or two throughout the day. Whereas, some other areas of the country are much more extended between those times. And then during rush hour, I mean, you're really only tacking on, 15, 20 minutes to your commute as opposed to that hour to 2 hours extra that you have to budget for.
So Oregonians don't hate Californians. So we're just going to put that out there. I think that's a big stigma. This is really a melting pot. Like, I know Jesse uses that all the time. It's a melting pot where everyone's kind of from different places, and that's what makes it unique and diverse, not only in landscape, but in people. And I want to also ask you, though, that's just popped into my head, talk to me about the Vancouver side, because that is a big chunk of our calls and our inquiries is people considering that Southwest Washington as an option, because that state, which is just a couple miles north of Portland and over the bridge, does not have state income tax. So depending on your income bracket and your employment structuring with the company that employs you, you might be saving anywhere from 6 to 9.9% annually on your taxable income. So talk to me, what have you learned about Vancouver now moving here and being an agent? You've got a lot of deals up there. A lot of people is that for a certain person, not for a certain person? What? Talk to me about
it. It really depends on your personality type. Exactly. So up in Vancouver right now, I mean, it's booming up there. I mean, you have Ridgefield, Camas. I mean, they're all going crazy right now. Ridgefield's just totally building out at this point. With that being said, I almost look at it as a little bit more of like your suburbia at that point. So once you get out to the Ridgefields and Camas, it kind of equivalent to what, your Beavertons and your Hillsboroughs are going to be for Portland. Vancouver as a whole, downtown is just booming right now. I mean, that's where I take my wife out for dinner all the time. I mean, our favorite burger place is right downtown Vancouver, right on the waterfront. Get to walk the dog on the water, go get a burger, all that stuff. So, I mean, it's really just personality type. What are you looking at? What do you want to be in the suburbs? Do you want to have, a nice yard, all that kind of stuff. So you're definitely going to get a little bit more yard, a little bit more bang for your buck up in Vancouver as opposed to Portland proper.
It's totally true. I think a lot of people that are landing in that like lower price point, maybe entry level $350 to $450 range, are finding some successes in the townhome game, which I think is a good alternative. I think condos are very complicated. I personally owned a condo as a primary and a rental, but townhome has a nice happy medium if you can't get into a competitive single family option. Additionally, another thing to note, Washington has lower property taxes. So it's not only more attractive from the non-income tax point of view, it has lower monthly payments in your mortgage because those property taxes are a little bit lower. The sacrifice, though, is dealing with the bridges and a little bit more traffic. And then there really isn't as much of a city feel to it as the inner parts of Portland. It's more of like I think Heather uses like a soccer mom minivan type of vibe. Camas, Washington is probably the Lake Oswego, the Washington side. So you're going to have your higher end homes. That's the top school district out there. Second to that, you've got the Ridgefield that you dropped right there. That's an up and coming area. Lots of new builds. It's close to the A Casino, which you hear casino and you're like, you think, old ladies and retired people smoking down cigarettes and putting their social
kind of like a
security.
convention center.
It's more like it's more like a convention center with different events, concerts, this type of stuff. So it's bringing a lot of tax revenue and really putting that community on steroids. So there's been a huge push for that spot.
Exactly. I mean, the casino's also, providing a lot of money, your school districts, all that stuff. So now your schools are being uplifted by there. I mean, it's really building out all these new construction communities are also including, your park areas, your new city center areas as well. So it's really going to be a great new area up there.
Well, and the one thing a lot of people think they can get a spot right downtown Vancouver, which is a beautiful, we've got a couple videos on Esther Shore Park.
Yep.
It's very modern. If you've looked at like the Pearl District in Portland, it's kind of got that vibe on the waterfront. Wine tasting spots, seafood restaurants, bistros, bars, walking paths.
I can say, coming from San Diego, Esther Short has the only Mexican restaurant I've found that has really, got my itch for Mexican food. So if you need Mexican food, if you're visiting from California, let me know and I can help you out there.
Well, yes, that's great to have that Mexican food spot itch. Everyone's got to have their little things. Right. With living down there, though, it's near impossible to find something affordable. Like, if it was available, I would have bought it because I think it's so cool down there. But most of those condos, I'm not really sure exactly what happened, but they built a bunch of stuff, and I think they were retaining them and letting appreciation go up. And now they're like slow drip selling them. And they're starting at like $950K, and not to mention a $700 a month HOA, super, super expensive. But there are some little pockets just a few football fields away. We were talking to a gentleman together. I almost dropped his name, but I don't have the right to do that. He was looking in a smaller condo, and they had a couple mixed ones not far from Esther Shore Park in the historical Vancouver downtown, like 4 football fields away in the mid 300s.
Exactly. In a perfect area too. I mean, you have your farmers markets there all the time. It's within walking distance to all the benefits of what the riverfront really has to offer you. So there are little pockets that you can find that are pretty affordable down there still.
But that little downtown area is tiny. Like that's it. The minute you get outside of that few football field area in Esther Shore Park, there's really not a lot of residential options outside of that. And you're getting back on the freeway and going and exit up. And that is one of the sacrifices you get being on the Washington side versus almost any inner city quadrant of Portland. Your accessibility to restaurants, bars, social life, grocery stores, mostly walkable and really quick to get to. But on the Washington, you aren't walking to things.
Exactly.
And no, there's no grab your reusable bag and, it's all driving. It's all get on the freeway, get off.
Yep. I will say, it's more typical for somebody from the Washington side to make a trip down to the Portland side when you're looking for your entertainment, when you're looking for your bars and restaurants.
Well, and when you're trying to buy something because there's no sales tax on the Oregon side.
Exactly. So we have Hayden Island. That's, just an exit south. It's the first exit off the 5 in Oregon there. That's where everybody does their shopping. That's where you're finding your big box stores, your Targets, your all
Best Buy, Home Depot, Lowe's.
Exactly.
Dick's Sporting Goods. And then you go into those parking lots. This is not far from where we live. You go to those parking lots, and half of them have got Washington license plates because they're coming down to save money on the sales tax, which is fine. I think that's okay. Yeah. I want everyone to be happy.
I'll let you reap that benefit. That's all right.
Yeah. No, I think, that there's the pros and the cons. There's gives and the takes. And it's all, I hate to hammer home that intro call. This is where we get to know you. This is where we ask the questions that we've asked hundreds of thousands of people over and over and over. And analyzed and watched and helped them buy homes in these quadrants. We know what you're going through, and we understand it's stressful, and we want to bring clarity and reduce stress to the entire process. So anyways, what are any other kind of notes that you wanted to share in regards to that whole move? We didn't really talk about the financing stuff. I was your mortgage guy.
You were.
I had the honor of doing you and Nicole's mortgage. Maybe you give me some nuggets on that and what you felt was beneficial from having proper mortgage assistance and someone that, like myself, it's weird I'm talking about myself, but someone who actually cared, you know?
And that's exactly it. That at the end of the day is the reason why we chose you. We weren't just another number at the end of the day. The perfect thing was when we came up here pre-qualified by you, we already knew what we could afford.
We dove into that with the mortgage strategy.
Exactly. You know? And the unfortunate things, when you're going to some of the bigger box companies, you can really put in a lot of what you want to put in, and you can kind of inflate that cost at the end of the day. And so the nice thing was that we had it really dialed in exactly what we could afford. And then on top of that with Listy, where we wanted to be as well. So it really helped us narrow our mindset and not get a hope up that, hey, maybe we could afford a $2 million home, that we'd get our hopes up and say, hey, let's move here. But instead we really narrow mindset and figure out exactly what we wanted before we even came up. So we had everything narrowed down.
That's a good point. And we do have those intro Zoom calls, which I'm on all of those calls. Like I incorporate myself with the agents like Lucas, Heather, Trisha, Jessica, everyone that we have, because a lot of the conversation when you're getting to know these people and you're building out a visit plan to move, they kind of have a pothole because there's a mortgage question.
Yep.
So I can pop in. I've been listening. I have investor point of view. I have born and raised point of view, but then I have the financing point of view. So the conversation keeps going, which is super nice. Exactly. Well, what about this? What if I have an offer letter? But if I can't move to this? But if I've got, a bonus coming, can I use that money? All these little things keep it going. Exactly. Right?
And that was the beauty of it too, when we actually got into the aspect of, putting in offers and everything is I swear Microsoft must give Addy, a little stipend for how much he loves his Excel spreadsheets. I love Excel. Absolutely loves Excel spreadsheets. I look at those Excel spreadsheets from you day in and day out, and I love it. And it makes it so much more digestible. What's your down payment? What's your PMI going to be? Right. All of that really taken in and saying, hey, this is going to be your monthly payment. And it really helps alleviate so much of the stress at the end of the day. You don't have to question yourself, will I be able to afford this? Will I be able to go out to some restaurants when I purchase a house? Will I be house poor? But instead, it'll really help you figure out what your finances will be going forward. And that's something that, when we were looking at houses in California, we didn't really receive that level of service where we'd be able to see exactly what it would look like down the road, but instead it was what we were looking at right now. And with your team and with Heather's team, we were able to do more of a long-term picture. You were interested in that 5 to 10 year plan with us instead of the immediate future, let's get you a house and go.
Oh, that makes me feel really good because I did put a lot of effort into that, and I love our flow system because you do that intro call, but then also we're going to set up a mortgage strategy, another separate phone call or Zoom. And I bring another, I'm trying to say we, but I'm one of the main mortgage people. Yep. So I've gotten to get to know these people, that perspective, their top priorities. And then we transition into, doing a loan application well in advance. So it's not stressful, right? Exactly. It's not just like, hurry up, get it in the washer, get it in the dryer, put it on the, it's like, okay, we get to take our time and I get to know you. And I know one of our strategies specifically for you and Nicole was we're going to buy another house. Like we're going to be starting a family. North Portland's fantastic when you don't have any kids, but it's not necessarily the best place to have kids. So that played into their decision of how much money to put into the house as a down payment. We didn't necessarily, we might not have income issues, right? You can get approved for this much, but let's talk a little bit more. What's the resale? What's the rentability? What's the appreciation potential within the quadrant? Exactly. Because it would have been really easy for you guys to overspend and be out in the boonies, but that doesn't align with your plan of, gaining appreciation, renting, cash flowing on that, and then utilizing credit and income appropriately for the next house.
Exactly. And that was...
Would have never have known that if I wasn't on all of the meetings with you
Exactly.
guys.
And that was the beauty of, having that 5 to 10 year plan with you going down the road there, is that we could say, why put that much down when we can put a little bit less down? It would make more sense for us in the long term being able to afford our next house so much quicker. And, again, moving from San Diego, we sold so much of our stuff just because it was so expensive to get there. We had like a little grill that we bought that would have been more expensive to move it than what it was worth. One. So it was like, all right, sell that. And now since we have a lower down payment, now we're getting a new grill and now we're getting a new couch and all that kind of stuff that really snowballs off of the fact that, we had that plan going forward. We knew what would affect us when we had a smaller down payment compared to a larger one. So that's the beauty of going through it, is that, Addie will really help advise, what is a good mortgage strategy, as opposed to, okay, you guys can put 10% down, just put it down.
Yeah.
You
got to think about it, because a lot of people can get qualified for a lot more than what their comfort level is. So you've got that to talk about. Okay, then we need to talk about how much are you planning to save? What are you doing in the next 2 to 5 years? Are you going to go from W-2 to self-employed? You got to analyze all that. But then, sometimes it's not appropriate to put all of your money into the home, because then you can't tap into that equity. Do you have 6 months payment reserves? Are we on the right track in order for you to buy that next house? I like to focus on, within your guys' particular strategy, which is similar to my wife and I's, is live in it for a year or two, rent it out, and then assess, but still, keep saving for that next one.
Exactly.
You really have to understand the cash flow. And when I say cash flow, it's like, what could I rent this out for, right?
Right.
What am I paying monthly? That number on what you're getting should be higher than what it's costing you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you're chasing it in the future, you got to kind of know your areas. You're like, okay, well, it can cash flow right now. Rents are going to go up. They'll continue to go up.
Exactly.
But some people are like, oh, I don't care what the payment is. I want this house and I'm going to rent it out. Well, if your payment's $3,700 a month, but you could only get $2,700 a month, you're losing $1,000. That's
right.
$12K a year. That's a lot of money. Whoopsies, right?
Yeah.
But maybe it could work out. Who knows? You're going to split the lot. So there's a lot of things to chat about. Mm-hmm. I'm ping-ponging everywhere.
Yeah, no, but that's also, the beauty of working with the Real Agent Now TMR team and you as well is, really figuring out that strategy of, again, where do you want to live, bringing that all together and encompassing it all in one together with it.
Well, and one of the things that we have worked out a really good flow on, which helps a lot of people, not only if you're moving in town, but specifically to this point from out of state, right?
Yeah.
You come and visit, you've only got a couple days, right? So your team's got to be ready. Got to be ready. So when I get a call from you or Heather, Jessica, or Jesse, Jackson, whoever it might be, I already know, because we've had a team meeting, that you're in town. I've probably had email correspondence with you, but I get a text, I get a call. Like Lucas just did this the other day for me. It's like, hey, we're probably going to offer on this home, and here's the address. So what I do is go back into the system. I look up those property taxes. We know you qualify for it because we're going to take you out to houses you can't buy. But what I'm doing is focusing the lens, and I'm going back to that initial spreadsheet and say it's listed for 450. I might go 445, 450, 455, 460, 470. So you can see all those different payment breakdowns. And for some people, they might have not decided if they want to go 20% down, 10% down, or 5% down. I'll also build out those options and update the closing costs, update all these other fees and things. So you know exactly, here's my payment, here's my total, I call it cash investment. Total amount I'm going to have to invest to buy this house. And that's huge to have, because then I send it back to you guys, and you guys are kind of on a no huddle offense with the offer. Like, yep, all my questions are answered.
Exactly.
We're eliminating the phone tag nonsense.
Yep. It really lays it out. I mean, the great Excel spreadsheets, I mean, you know, exactly what makes you more comfortable moving forward, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you know, you can make those spreadsheets, you know, 450, 470, you know, up to 490, whatever you want it to be built out as, and really see what you're most comfortable with. You know, seeing that 490, you might look at it and be like, maybe I'm not that comfortable. And so that gives you a good idea as a buyer. All right, this is what I can go up to and feel comfortable with my offer.
And it might seem like really silly and easy, and someone might be like, well, that's not that big of a deal. You'd be really surprised. First and foremost, property taxes, HOAs, insurances, interest rates, all these things are moving every day and property to property, right? So it's really important. Even though you're looking at something and you're like, oh, I'm approved up to $550,000. Not all $550,000 homes are the same monthly payment. There are those variables, and that's where you got to lean on your team to dial it in. And that all comes from my personal experience of not being educated on our first buy. The uncertainty, the confusion. Well, I thought it was this. When I got approved, I was told my monthly payment was going to be $1,800, and I bought the house that you told me to buy, right? Same price point, but now it's $370 more a month. I wasn't prepared for that. And you've spent weeks upon weeks and hours, and your only time off viewing homes, and your perception was it's going to cost me this, and this was my payment. Not even accurate. So we do take a very special approach, tailored, all under the common denominator of preventing stress and uncertainty and unnecessary anxiety. Right?
Exactly.
That was a huge run-on sentence.
It's all right. Take a breath. Take a breath.
I just get really passionate about the financing side. Because like it impacted me personally. Like literally, you could have blindfolded me when I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
What?
And that's
my worst nightmare for our clients.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It was a night and day difference, you know, working with you guys when we moved up here, and now what I continue to do with you is we're a cohesive team together. You know, I look at it as, you know, you're part of the same company I am almost, where, you know, we're talking on the daily, like you said, before I even offer, I'm talking to you, right? I'm talking to the mortgage advisor at that point and figuring out for my clients what's their best interest, because at the end of the day, that's what I do. That's what Heather does. Our Real Agent Now group does, is we're going to be straight shooters with you guys. We're going to tell you how we feel. We're going to tell you exactly what we think would be a good idea for you, or maybe it's a bad idea for you. So we really want to help you at the end of the day.
I love that. That's a great conclusion. And, you know, it's been a great pleasure. I've been wanting to have this conversation with you, Lucas, officially for the podcast and the YouTube and all this stuff, because it's just a cool story. And it's another, there's a lot of great nuggets. If you're looking to, you know, relocate to a new spot, take out these nuggets and understand you want to work with these teams. Listen to some of these points that Lucas has made with the moving. If you're specifically looking at the Portland area, though, hopefully the feedback is really dialed in and giving you a behind the curtain look. And I'm proud to have Lucas as a team member too, because he brings in that perspective of someone that's actually experienced what we're at professionally helping people with every day.
Exactly.
So I think that's a wrap for everything, Lucas. Thanks so much
Thanks for having me.
I think it was fun. This is a longer episode than we normally do.
There we go.
We killed it. So thanks again, everyone.
All right, so yes, we've helped over 150 people move and relocate to Portland. We know exactly how it works. You heard it from Lucas himself, and you could even work with Lucas if you'd like to. The only way that we can help you is you've got to reach out. You got to give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email. Days, nights, weekends, we got your back when moving to Portland, Oregon, and Southwest Washington. And until the next video, guys, we'll catch you later.